the President-elect of the United States, Barack H. Obama.
After President Obama's inauguration and Rick Santelli's infamous rant on CNBC in February of 2009, disgruntled conservatives began raucous protests in opposition to bank bailouts, taxes, and what they perceived as the over-intrusiveness of the federal government. And the Tea Party surge helped the GOP take back control of the House in the 2010 midterm elections, but has also been responsible for a slew of unelectable Senate candidates: Sharon Engel in Nevada, Christine O'Donnell in Delaware, Joe Miller in Alaska, and Richard Murdoch in Indiana, who won the GOP nominations over more moderate candidates only to lose in the general election. One of the most visible of the Tea Party organizations is the Tea Party Express, which became nationally known after several national bus tours and co-hosting a presidential debate with CNN. The chief political strategist for the Tea Party Express, Sal Russo, is our guest. The Tea Party. Are the reports of its demise premature?
From Fresno, the Maddy Report, with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Kepler.
Welcome. A familiar political operative in California for decades, our guest Sal Russo is now known nationally as the chief political strategist for the Tea Party Express. A quick editor's note, Sal Russo is a longtime friend, was a longtime friend of Senator Ken Maddy, is currently on the board of directors of the nonpartisan Maddy Institute. Well, welcome back to the Maddy Report.
Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about the 2012 election. It seems like a lot of folks were genuinely surprised at the results. Obama won in an electoral landslide. Governor Brown was able to win voter approval of a new tax. The Democrats won a supermajority in both houses of the California legislature. From your perspective, was there any part of the Republican message that was a problem?
Well, first, I think you have to keep in mind, at least nationally, the election was very close. What happened is that it broke towards the Democrats at the end, and so they won everything that was competitive. So
they won 8 of the 9 states that were competitive.
I think it's something like 260,000 votes had shifted. Romney would have been elected president. If it's like 300,000 votes in the Senate had shifted, the Republicans would have gained 6 instead of lost 2. So it really was a close election nationally. One thing that people are forgetting is that the last time that, other than Ronald Reagan defeating Jimmy Carter, the last Democratic incumbent that was defeated for re-election was Grover Cleveland in 1888. I mean, you just don't beat incumbent presidents. That's a rarity. We had it happen a couple of times in recent times, so everyone thinks, oh, that happens all the time. It's really tough to beat an incumbent. And we had consumer confidence on the economy going up. I think 5 straight months consumer confidence was up. Obama's positives were edging up, got to 50%.
So it wasn't the message, was it the messenger?
Well, I think it's just difficult to ever beat an incumbent, first and foremost. Now secondly is,
Well, it wasn't just that race. I mean, the Democrats picked up seats in both the House and the Senate. And as well, California, that may just be a situation where California is a very blue state, but still.
I think the dynamics in California were a little different than nationally. Nationally, I mean, we lost 8 seats. The Republicans lost 8 seats in the House, but that was on top of a 67-seat gain 2 years ago. So the House is conservative today, maybe a touch more conservative than it was before the election. As I said earlier, the Senate would be up 6 Republicans instead of down 2 with a shift of 300,000 votes. So very, very close. And when the president gets reelected like that, I mean, you're just going to have the dynamics work that you had a little bit of a Democratic edge nationally.
So the Electoral College was a little large, but you're saying the popular vote was just closer than that?
It was close. It was really close.
Okay. I think I saw the number we were talking earlier. I think the number I saw that Romney got 47% of the vote, which is kind of ironic, but and Obama got 52% or something. But let's talk about the method of reaching the voters. Was that a problem? Did the Democrats simply have a better ground game?
The Democrats did have a better ground game. I mean, the decision the Obama campaign made, which ended up being the right decision, which was to forget about, I'm going to work with both parties, I'm going to be in the middle, which was messaged in 2008. His campaign in 2012 was right after all the key voter groups he was after. So it was minorities, single women, young people. There was no pretense that he was going to be the president for everybody. He was going to be the president for 50% plus 1. So their whole get out the vote system and their whole messaging was geared to specific voter groups. And it worked very effectively. And so when you look at the demographics of who voted in 2012, it was uncharacteristically high in those demographic groups that Obama targeted.
Same as 2008, in essence.
Same thing in 2008, which nobody expected because of the fact that the aura around Obama is gone. He's now seen as immortal, which he wasn't seen in 2008. And the Republican plan, which was tied to a computer system that collapsed, and so we actually had.
I thought he was a business person though, so. That's kind of ironic again.
He was, but apparently some of the campaign weren't very businesslike. So it ended up being a colossal failure. And so I've seen conflicting numbers on it, but certainly in a lot of states, the vote for Romney was even lower than the vote for McCain. So there was certainly some misfunction in the dynamics of the turning out vote. So there was something that did go wrong. But the bottom line of it is that it's difficult to beat an incumbent president, and if you do, you need a candidate that's really able to connect with people. And Mitt Romney, who I think would have been a terrific president, never quite made the connection. Part of it was during that period of time after the primaries when Romney was the nominee, but before he could start spending his general election money after the convention, the Obama campaign went out there and really pounded him negatively in every key state. And they ran his negatives up so high that by the time the campaign started in September, he never could overcome that. He could never get that connection to the American public ever again.
Okay, when we come back, more on the 2012 election. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Sal Russo, Chief Strategist for the Tea Party Express. There were some visible losses by the Tea Party in the last election, Alan West and Joe Walsh. Do you think that the results of the election indicates voter fatigue with the Tea Party?
No. I mean, we won 67 seats, I think, in 2010. We held almost all those. We won some key Tea Party victories this time, Mark Meadows in North Carolina, Ted Yoho in Florida. So I think the Tea Party is going to be stronger in this Congress than it was in the last Congress. But here's the thing to remember. I think people get distracted by the name Tea Party. What the Tea Party Express stands for is opposition to the increased spending, the intrusiveness of the federal government, and the skyrocketing national debt. I mean, that's what the Tea Party stands for. So whether you say you like the Tea Party or you don't like the Tea Party, 70% of Americans think spending's out of control, the deficit is way too high, and we have an unsustainable debt. So I think on the principal issue that the Tea Party stands for is, I think all the candidates were talking about it in 2012, even more so they were in 2010. You can't find a Democrat that says, hey, let's expand the government and raise taxes, and, well, Obama kind of says that, but there's hardly a Democrat that says that. Everybody says this is a serious problem.
Well, Congress has had historically low approval ratings, and there's a lot of voter frustration over last summer's stalemate on the debt ceiling. Do you think that played at all into the results of the 2012 election?
I think there's frustration with both political parties. I don't think that one party is particularly, you see the polls change, that they'll blame the Republicans in Congress or the president or somebody for not getting it done. I think it's a system-wide complaint. I mean, it's true in California. It's true nationally. People want things done. They don't really care how the sausage is made. They want a sausage on a roll with some mustard on it, They don't care about how it gets done.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. They do say legislation's like making sausage, so good analogy. What about this the cracks in the wall that are appearing with Grover Norquist's no tax pledge? Some high-profile Republicans are beginning to back away from that. Do you think such a pledge is a good idea, or is it too restricting as kind of a one-size-fits-all approach to public policy?
We've taken the position at Tea Party Express that we're not going to get caught up in the symbolism, that we're going to worry about the substance. So kind of this bluster about being for the pledge, against the pledge, I mean, I'm not sure that that's particularly relevant. What we do care about is destructive economic policies that will make the growth in their economy worse, that will provide less opportunity for people. That's what our goal is. And so if you want growth in this economy, you have to maintain low tax rates, and you have to unburden some of the regulations that have been crippling the economy. And that's all I got to say to somebody. If you've financed a home recently and see the volume of forms that you fill out and you have no idea what you're signing, and that's what they're saying, oh, well, we're helping you out with all that regulation, I think almost anybody who's been through that knows that's nonsense.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. What do you see as the #1 takeaway from the 2012 elections?
I don't think that there was a strong message because people voted for this out of frustration for the same because they didn't know what to do. There wasn't a good, clear choice. When you listen to what people said about the difference between the economic policies of Barack Obama or Mitt Romney, they couldn't distinguish the two. So we didn't have that contrasting election that we should have had. I think that's a fault of one fault of the Romney campaign. They didn't make clear what their economic policies were.
What about the demographics? And a lot of people are talking about the impact of Latinos or of women or of young people or Asians. They all broke, as you indicated earlier, they all broke for Obama. Was that a big takeaway? Maybe that the Republicans are not reaching them?
You know, when you lose an election, you know, you have to look at how do you expand your base everywhere. I mean, that's certainly. I mean, I know when we ran Governor Deukmejian's campaign, he won by I think 91,000 votes. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry that came in the office says, "Oh, well, you know, my group was the group that put you over the top." You know, and by the same token, is that when you lose an election, any group you didn't do better in, you're going to say we should do that. So clearly, we have to do a lot better in attracting minorities to the Republican Party. I think we have to do better with young people. We did do a lot better with young people, just not well enough. I think we took a big toll on Obama's lead with people under 30 this time.
Do you think that, again, was it the way you reached those folks, the messaging, the message? What was the problem there? What was the disconnect?
Well, I think there's two things. One is the party is always defined by your leaders. So, you know, Mitt Romney defines what the Republican Party is in the election, just, you know, the reality of it. And so he didn't have that great connection, unfortunately. I mean, he was seen to be aloof and he seemed to be wealthy. And, you know, the Democrats did a good job of demonizing him, I think unfairly, but they did. So you have that problem. And so since he controls the message for the party, I mean, that's the message. Well, and so I think the message needs to be better.
Recently, the Republicans named the chairs in the House. They're all white males. Is that a problem?
Well, you know, I don't think that's a problem per se. I mean, you know, obviously Kathy McMorris Rogers is the #4 leader in the House, and she's a woman from Spokane, Washington. So, you know, there are key women in the Republican leadership. Just the way seniority works, that they haven't gotten up to committee chairmanships at this point. But I think part of the problem is you know, and I think we talked about it the last time I was on the Maddy Report, is that gerrymandering has been a disservice particularly to Republicans, is it makes all the districts safe. That was one thing that Ken Maddy excelled at, was that he didn't stop at where Republicans were, but he went to every group. He went to Hispanic groups, he went to black groups, he went to labor groups. There was no group that he wasn't willing to reach out to.
There's no indication that gerrymandering had an effect in this election. It hurt Tea Party candidates in Illinois, but it helped them in Texas.
Not gerrymandering in the sense of where the district lines are, but gerrymandering in the sense that it made districts homogeneous, and therefore Republicans or Democrats didn't have to reach out to people that were different than them. And so that's the thing, that when we had more competitive districts, we had people that were more skilled at that, and I think we need to be more skilled at that.
Okay, when we come back, we'll talk about the Tea Party willingness to compromise and move the nation forward. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Sal Russo, Chief Strategist for the Tea Party Express. It's been said that politics is the art of compromise. Ronald Reagan raised taxes and compromised on immigration. So, will the Tea Party compromise or hold fast to its positions? So let's talk first about spending in the federal deficit. Is the Tea Party open to new sources of additional revenue, or do they think that the budget has to be balanced specifically with spending cuts alone?
No, I mean, obviously, when you have a divided government, you have to compromise. I mean, the Tea Party Express compromised in the last lame duck session. You know, we supported the Obama tax bill. Not all the Tea Party groups did, but we did.
And being specific about that was?
It extended the Bush tax cuts for 2 years. It had the payroll tax holiday, extended unemployment benefits. And then as part of that was the continuing resolution, I think it was for 3 months, that kept spending levels basically at the current level. So we swallowed a lot of things that we didn't like in that bill in the interest of keeping tax rates low and trying to grow this economy.
One of the things you didn't like was the extension of unemployment insurance because you thought that might impact the debt. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, I mean, that was one of the factors. We were willing to extend it, probably extended beyond what it should have been, but it's all in the interest of putting something together that you can live with. And so getting the tax cuts we thought was the most important piece of that. So we gave up things, much like, as you said, Reagan had to give up. He thought we needed to build the defense budget up so we can keep the Soviets at bay. And the only way he could do that was to agree to domestic spending, and he didn't like doing that. But you have to give and you have to give to get, and that's
the other
what
thing
he
did was immigration. So do you see the Tea Party moving on immigration reform, working toward a pathway to citizenship? Where do you see the Tea Party on that issue?
Tea Party, we've stayed exclusively on economic issues, so we don't have a stand in that. I mean, but obviously, not addressing the issue is silly. It needs to be addressed. There needs to be a comprehensive reform. But we stay focused on the economic issues. And to get to your, really the key question that you asked was, can we get our budget under control with cuts alone? Absolutely not. There's no way you can do that. The only way we can get our way out of this is to be responsible in spending, and we have to have pro-growth policies in Washington.
But when you say that, are you talking about being revenue neutral, or are you talking about additional revenue?
I'm saying that you have to keep tax rates low. We've already learned that. President Kennedy learned that, President Reagan learned that, President Clinton learned that when you keep tax rates low, you get more revenue.
But tax rates, weren't they higher under Clinton than they were under Bush? And we've had the Bush tax cuts for 10 years, yet the economy has faltered.
Yes, but if you look from 2000 to 2007, which is the last data the IRS has, with the Bush tax cuts, I think revenues are up, I can't remember now, it's like 64% or something like that. It's gone from 100 and something trillion to 200 and something trillion. So it's brought
just
more
that expenses
revenue.
are up a lot more too.
Yes, it's spending. That's what we've been saying all along. The spending is what's excessive. So we do need to do something about excessive spending for sure. But most importantly, I think you have to have pro-growth policies. The way to do that is to, I think ideally the way to do that is junk the tax code and go to a flat tax. I think that's the best idea. I'd be willing to accept a fair tax, but one thing you've got to do is you've got to get rid of all the loopholes in the tax code, because anybody who's wealthy has the lawyers and accountants that get themselves out of things, and that's where we have a lot of problems.
Let me transition to another issue that's a big issue, and that's the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. One of the main goals of the Tea Party was to see that repealed. That appears unlikely. So now what's the next move?
Well, I don't think it's unlikely. It's still one of our goals. They're having problems with the exchanges. I think something like almost 20 governors have now rejected creating the exchanges. I think there's a lot of issues still with Obamacare. I don't think it works ultimately, and I know some people know it's not going to work and want to go to a single-payer system. I hope when they realize it doesn't work, we can get rid of it and actually improve our private healthcare system.
Let me ask you about the tenor and tone of the debate. The use of hyperbole. You hear words like socialist, radical, traitor, racist. Does that have to be toned down a little bit? How do you negotiate a resolution or an agreement with folks that you're demonizing?
I certainly agree with that. I think the rhetoric's too heated. I think it's more excessive on the left than on the right, but certainly there are people on our side that violate it. And as sometimes somebody points out to me, I might get carried away even once in a while and say something. But I try not to, because it's not constructive.
You've been very well behaved here. I want to thank you for that. Well, listen, when we come back, we'll talk about the long-term future of the Tea Party movement. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. We're talking with Sal Russo, Chief Strategist with the Tea Party Express. So what's the future role of the Tea Party and the Republican Party?
Well, the Tea Party, to be successful, I've always felt, has to be strong in both political parties. The problem is, as long as you have Obama as president and the Democrats are pushing bigger spending, stimulus.
But there are conservative Democrats, in some of those borderline states.
There are some. There are not many, and many of them told me that they just can't speak out. They can't speak out in the Democratic caucus on spending restraint. But to be successful, we have to do that. We have to turn the corner, because Americans, whether you're liberal or conservative, when I talk to people, it doesn't matter what their ideology or party is privately, they all tell me the spending is way out of control, the debt's way out of control, we've got to do something about it. Everybody acknowledges that. But you get in the political arena and we can't seem to solve the problem.
But one of the arguments, though, that the other side would say is, yes, spending is high now because we're in a recession, unemployment insurance had to be extended, et cetera, and that's why and revenue receipts are down, therefore big deficit. and as things get better, we'll begin to pull out of that. I mean, do you buy that argument?
Well, the economy is dynamic enough that sometimes, despite what government does, you're going to go through the business cycle. But what we're seeing is 1% and 2% growth out of a recession, which we've never seen anything like that. We should be at 4% and 5% growth. And part of the problem with that, and the reason we have such low growth, is because we have too much of a tax burden, too much of a regulatory burden, and we're spending too much. The debt's unsustainable. And so you suck all that money out of the economy, and you don't have the growth. Well, and now you're talking about, as Obama's saying, is to not extend the push tax cuts on the top wage earners. Well, that money is the money that isn't money that goes to people that are rich. It goes to people that are trying to become rich. Warren Buffett makes $1 a year. He isn't affected by that. So
but there was a controversial CBO report that was released and then not released that said that actually no, that the top income earners, if you increase their tax burden, it really isn't going to have much of an impact in terms of economic activity.
I saw Warren Buffett say that. I certainly disagree with that. I remember that was one of Ronald Reagan's stories that he used to tell when he was in Hollywood. Is that, of course, by then the tax rate, I think, was 91%. And he said at the end of the year, he always declined doing the movie. He said, "Well, am I going to do the movie for 10%?"
That was under a Republican president, Eisenhower.
That's right. That's right.
Let's talk about this whole debate about social conservatism versus fiscal conservatism. It sounds like the Tea Party Express is falling down on the line of fiscal conservatism, not really getting involved with the social conservatism part of the Republican Party. Can the Republican Party do both, or do they have to kind of pick a side?
I think that we've had in this country basically a conservative-liberal divide, since the late 50s and early 60s. And for the Republican Party to be a majority party, it has to have economic, foreign policy, and social conservatives. I mean, I think that's essential to be the coalition. Now, we focus only on economic issues because at this point in time in our history, I think that's the most important thing, and we can rally a majority of people on our issues at this point in time.
So you're not agreeing with the argument that some pundits have said that, on the social issues, the Republican Party's positions are driving away single women, Latinos, younger voters?
I think there's a harshness to the social conservative message today that we need to get rid of. I mean, I think what we're seeing is young people, even those that are conservative, are much less judgmental. I know Reagan's answer always used to be, let's leave that to the man upstairs. That was kind of his standard reply. And I think we have to probably be more tolerant on social issues than we've been and accept people with different viewpoints to be a majority party. But I don't think that means you deviate from the conservative base of the party.
What if the economy actually improves? Does that take the steam out of the Tea Party movement?
Sure, when the economy gets better, then people are less concerned. But I think what we're going to find is under the Obama policies, the economy is never going to get much better. We're going to be stuck in the 1-2% growth rate, and thanks to Europe, we may actually dip into another recession. So I don't think the next 2 years are going to be positive.
Who should pick the candidates? Should the Republican Party officials be picking the candidates to avoid what they're saying are unelectable folks? Or should it be a grassroots movement of conservatives that select them? In other words, should we make the primary contests, should we emphasize them or de-emphasize primaries?
Well, I think you always want to put confidence in voters. I just came back to Eastern Europe and was listening to horror stories of people telling me what it was like under communism when you give absolute power to people. It goes bad. So, you're much better off giving people the power, even though they make bad decisions. This last election, there were a lot of bad decisions. California, as far as I'm concerned. But I'd rather have the people doing it.
Disagree with you on that.
That's right, they do. But I'd rather have the people make decisions than the political insiders.
What about this tension between the Tea Party wing and the traditional wing of the Republican Party? Are they going to keep fighting, or is one side going to try to co-opt the other? What's going to happen in 2014, let's say, the 2014 elections?
Well, I think the Senate Campaign Committee, the Republican Senate Committee, put Ted Cruz as one of the co-chairmen of the committee. So
he's a Tea Party favorite.
And he's a Tea Party favorite. So I think that there's a desire for cooperation by everybody. But we're not going to support candidates that want to go out there and raise taxes. Not because there's some magic, as I keep pointing out. The Bush tax cuts are not in the 10 Commandments. I looked. It's not in there. So, it's not like it's magic. But what is magic is that if we create a bad economic environment, That doesn't affect rich people. They're already rich. It affects poor people. It affects middle-class people. That's what we don't want to do. We don't want to create an environment where people can't get out of the bad economic situation they're in. And on that, we're uncompromising.
Well, I want to thank Sal Russo, Chief Strategist with the Tea Party Express, for joining us. If you want to stay current with state and local politics, you can sign up for our award-winning e-newsletter, The Maddy Daily, by logging on to our website at maddyinstitute.org. And now, another perspective.
The Tea Party is alive and well in Kern County, Kern County being one of the most conservative counties, if not the most conservative county in California. Nationally, the Tea Party may have run its course like so many other populist movements have in the United States, and that could be the case with the Tea Party. Is it over already? I don't think so. There's still a lot of support in places like Kern County, all through the Midwest and the Deep South, a lot of support. But nationally, I'm not sure it's the same. The Tea Party took some hits in this last election. I think they damaged the Republican product a little bit. Part of that is all the hyperbole we heard. We're hearing socialism and Marxism, and I don't think some people know quite what those terms mean, and they've not been used accurately. I think some Republicans, especially members of the Tea Party, were hurt by the fact that many signed the Grover Norquist anti-tax pledge. Some people saw it as an anti-compromise pledge. And in fact, there was very little compromise going on. And that wasn't all the fault of the Republicans or the Tea Party, of course. But I think from the results of the election, voters saddled the Republicans and the Tea Party specifically with a lot of that. And I think Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and that ilk, they need to take some responsibility, not that they will, for the way things have gone in the last few years. Every few decades in this country, we have a populist movement that rises up and gets the attention of the electorate and oftentimes makes a difference. And the Tea Party is one of those movements. Every one of these populist movements eventually runs its course and goes away. And I think it's very likely that the Tea Party will, in fact, join those groups. But in the meantime, the Tea Party has the opportunity to influence the country, perhaps for the better. Spending, deficits, the national debt, all of great concern, and the Tea Party has been a vocal proponent for addressing those subjects. But there has to be some compromise in the Tea Party's attitude. We've not seen that, and I think it's hurt the Tea Party. For the Maddy Report, I'm Robert Price of the Bakersfield, California.
The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the Maddy Institute, the California Channel, Casey, or Valley PBS. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the points and opinions shared in the Maddy Report, visit our website at valleypbs.org/Maddy. This is Mark Kepler for the Maddy Report. Thanks for joining us.